Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's virtual event, Multicloud over Coffee. I'm Laura Dunn with Megaport, and I'm so excited to kick off today's virtual event. For the next hour and 15 minutes, this presentation, followed by a Q&A, will reflect on the importance of building an agile, future-proof network that is resilient, responsive, and able to handle anything that it's thrown its way. So each attendee present today will be entered for a chance to win an Oculus Quest 2. And so the raffle will take place immediately following our webinar. So grab a cup of coffee and listen in to this engaging discussion featuring fantastic speakers from Google Cloud, Qwinix, Megaport, and 1623 Farnam. So our poll is, what are you looking to gain from today's presentation? Okay, awesome. It looks like we have our answers. So let's get it started. It's my pleasure to introduce the moderator for today's virtual event, 1623 Farnam's VP of Business Development, Greg Elliott. Greg, the virtual coffee house is yours.
All right. Thanks, Laura. And thank you, everyone, for investing your time with us this morning. This is our first multi-cloud over coffee, and we've put a lot of work into it with our friends with Google Cloud and Qwinix and Megaport, and they're really going to share some great knowledge with you today. And I'm sure you won't be disappointed from the poll. It looks like there's a mix of all different levels and layers of cloud, so that's good. Everybody should get something out of the talk today. As we kick it off, just want to, if you don't know anything about 1623 Farnam, just a quick overview. We are the carrier hotel for Omaha, Nebraska, an edge data center. And we have, we're right in the middle of the United States, great spot for a carrier hotel. We sit on fiber routes, east, west, north, south, and everything in between. We have 50 carriers and ISPs that have a physical fiber presence within our facility, as well as multiple cloud providers. We also have our internet exchange, so lots of peering opportunities, and then layer on top of that Megaport. There's tons of ways to utilize our facility for a hybrid cloud solution. So putting this together is just one example of how that we think that customers can use our facility. So we're excited to have you here and excited for somebody to win the Oculus Quest 2. And also, Megaport stepped up to give 3 free months of a Megaport at 1623, and then we've also matched that as a free cross connect for 3 months as well, so you can get into the Megaport platform and leverage it, see how it can benefit your hybrid cloud strategy and help with your digital transformation. So we'll kick it off. We're gonna have panelists, our expert panelists, do their talks 7 to 10 minutes, and then we'll roll into a curated panel discussion and then answer questions along the way. So I'll go ahead and introduce our experts. First up, we have John Bacon, partner engineer with Google Cloud. And then next will be Mac McDaniel, VP of Cloud Professional Services with Qwinix. Then we have Nick DiCristofaro, Network Specialist and Customer Engineer with Google Cloud. And then finally, we'll have the one and only Kyle Moretta, he's a Solution Architect with Megaport. So without further ado, we'll turn it over to John. Take it away, John.
Great, thanks, Greg. And thanks to 1623 Farnam, Megaport, and Qwinix for having me here today. Before I get started, you may see another survey pop up on your screen regarding your familiarity with containers. So go ahead and respond to that as I give you a quick intro about myself. So I'm John, and I'm the app mod lead for Google Cloud's partner engineering team. What that means is I work with our services partners, helping them and our customers with anything that falls within our app mod portfolio, like containers, CI/CD, and hybrid or multi-cloud. So today, I'm going to give a brief overview. Actually, let's look at the survey results. What are containers? Uh-oh. So this is going to be fun. Perfect. So today, I'm going to give a brief overview of what Google's solution to hybrid and multi-cloud is, and that's going to be Anthos. A couple of things to note before I get started. It's not a single product. Anthos is actually a suite of products. I'm not going to discuss every component of Anthos today, but I'm going to highlight some of the core components that you can see business value from. And second, I'm going to try to keep this high level. I might dive deep every once in a while. However, the key takeaway should be really, what is the business value you get from Anthos? And if anyone at your company wants a deeper understanding of the product, I'm happy to have a follow-up conversation or connect you to your Google Cloud account team later. Okay. So most organizations have either taken the leap to public cloud, or at least have a cloud strategy that they're exploring. But a lot of workloads still do remain on-prem, and they're going to continue to do so for a while. This could be for various reasons like proximity to your end users, compliance, or data locality rules, and so on. So while organizations are building out a cloud strategy, a big component of that is understanding how to handle multi-cloud or hybrid cloud. However, some challenges arise as you start to adopt this strategy. Security versus agility, this is a big one, right? Developers want to push code to production quickly, no matter where the infrastructure is. But the security teams want to ensure the code is safe. The tools used by the developers are going to be verified and trusted. And this sometimes can slow down the development process. Reliability versus cost. We all know this one, right? When people think of reliability, they think of adding redundant machines, data protection tools, and other services that can increase your costs. And lastly, portability versus consistency. This is really important when you start looking at multi-cloud or hybrid cloud. When I start to run modern applications across different environments, like on-prem or multiple clouds, I want that application to be portable. I also want it to be a consistent experience. My infrastructure teams want to deploy on-prem or in GCP or even in another cloud without having to make a significant change or adopt new tooling. So how does Anthos even help with all of this? So first, I'm going to reiterate, Anthos isn't a single product, but a suite of products that when we work together, help solve the challenges I just mentioned. I'll briefly discuss some of these components over the next few slides. But before that, here's some of the benefits you get from Anthos. Write once, deploy anywhere. This means that a developer doesn't have to build an application differently depending on the environment it's being deployed into. Consistency across environments. So whether I'm a security professional, an infrastructure admin, or a developer, Anthos is going to provide a consistent set of tooling that I can leverage no matter what environment I'm deploying to. And as I speak to some of these components, you'll see how the rest of these benefits are achieved. So right before I go into these components, it's also nice to set the stage for who at your organization this applies to, right? So the different components of Anthos provide various benefits depending on your role. So the benefits that an application owner or developer is going to see might come from one of the components, where the infrastructure and the platform teams see benefits from other components within the Anthos portfolio. So if you hear me during my presentation mention, this is why a developer would like this, or this is why the infrastructure team would like this, that's why. It's also important to note that most of the components of Anthos are built on top of open source products. This helps avoid any vendor lock-in, and it allows our apps to be portable. Okay, so let's actually talk about what is Anthos. Where can I deploy it? So like I mentioned before, it's a suite of components that help with things like policy management, cluster management, and so on. Can be deployed on-prem or other clouds as well. And when we drill down, you're going to see what these components actually are. So we have things like Anthoconfig Management, which I'll talk about, Anthos Gke, and Anthos Service Mesh. Also note at the bottom, I think this is really important for everyone on this call, is we can run this on-prem, running on top of a VMware environment or a bare metal environment. We also support running it on top of AWS and Azure, as well as GCP, of course. And then over to the right, we have something, I'm sorry, the text didn't come through, but it's supposed to be called attached clusters. And what this means is we can actually connect a non-Google Kubernetes cluster into Anthos and provide you a single pane of glass visibility into all those clusters, as well as some additional features. So imagine you're running OpenShift in your data center today, or running EKS in Amazon, and you start to adopt Anthos, but you're not ready to move those clusters over to GKE just yet. We can still connect those to our Anthos environment. We can see, monitor them, deploy some applications to them, and have some other benefits. Okay, so let's actually talk about what are those components. What are the core components of Anthos, and how do you see benefit from them? One of the main ones is Anthos Gke. But before we talk specifically about Anthos Gke, it's important to understand what is Gke and a little of the history behind it. Admittedly, Google was late to the cloud game, but when it comes to Kubernetes, we have the most experience and the most mature offering there. And it's really important because it's no secret that Kubernetes is the de facto standard for container management. It's also no secret that setting up Kubernetes is extremely difficult and cumbersome. So not only that, but it becomes even more confusing when you look at day two operations. Things like upgrades, monitoring, and logging. In fact, customers that try to deploy Kubernetes on their own oftentimes fail because they don't have a good plan on how to handle those upgrades. So that's why having a managed version like Gke is extremely important. Gke, which is Google Kubernetes Engine, assists our customers to make cluster creation easy. It provides advanced cluster management features like load balancing and auto scaling, auto upgrades and repairs, as well as logging and monitoring. All of this with very little effort from developers or infrastructure teams. Once your code is put in a container, you can create a Gke cluster using the Google Cloud Console, the command line interface, or the API. And it's really easy to do. You don't have to have an intimate knowledge of Kubernetes to do so. And as I mentioned, Anthos is multiple products. And that first product is Anthos Gke. It's taking our managed version of Google Kubernetes Engine and allowing you to deploy that in your own data center or on another cloud to give you that consistent experience. So here's what it looks like in the console. So if you were to log into the GCP console and you have a bunch of different clusters running, you can see them right here. You can see that there's one that says Gke, so those are your clusters running in Google Cloud. You see some that say on-prem, so those are running in your own private data center. And then you actually see some that say GCP. Those are non-Gke clusters. We just took open source Kubernetes, we put it on top of some VMs and threw it in there so that it shows that those can actually be highlighted within your console. So if you had those OpenShift clusters or those EKS clusters I mentioned before, those would be in this view as well. Okay, the second component I want to talk about is Anthos Config Management. Now, imagine that you have a team, at your company that deploys a Kubernetes cluster. So that team has to worry about how do they enforce policies of that cluster? How do they put security guardrails in place? Which really isn't that difficult if it's one team in one cluster. Now, imagine that team goes around and they tell everybody else at your company that Kubernetes is amazing and they need to adopt it as well, right? And so another team starts to use it, and then another team, and then they have multiple clusters, right? Some running for dev, some for prod, and you just end up having tons of teams and tons of clusters out there. And they could be on Google Cloud, they could be on-prem, they could be in other clouds. So that actually becomes very difficult to manage. Think of some customers maybe in retail, like a fast food restaurant. They might run a small Kubernetes cluster in each store to handle things like inventory and point of sale, and they might have 500 or 1,000 stores. So in these scenarios, how do I ensure that my security policies I set are enforced? How do I ensure that the IT admin at one of these branch offices or in my data center doesn't make a change to a cluster that's running in one of these stores or in my data center? Well, the answer is config management. Config management allows you to define and enforce policies across your deployments. So you have a central repository that manages things like access control, like RBAC, resource quotas, and namespaces. And whether it's on-prem or in the cloud, config management, it's declarative. It's continually checking that cluster state and applying the desired state to enforce those policies. So if someone comes through and makes a change, it's actually going to stop them from that, or it's going to put guardrails in place to revert that change back to the desired state. And so as an admin, you need to create a consistent environment that offers security by default for your developers. You can deploy new environments very quickly with the confidence that the desired cluster state and configurations have been applied. And config management helps maintain control over cluster sprawl, as I mentioned earlier. As more and more teams adopt Kubernetes or grow their environments for redundancy or to expand to a new geo for whatever reason, you're going to increase the overhead in managing separate configurations. And config management solves this problem by delivering a single centralized place for multi-cluster management. Perfect. And the last component I'm going to talk about is Anthos Service Mesh. So if you're not familiar with a service mesh, don't worry. All you need to know is that a service mesh automates a lot of functionality into your network. A lot of the benefits you get are things a developer would typically have to code into their application. But with ASM, the developer doesn't have to worry about any of this. The main three things I like to highlight when I'm talking about a service mesh is observability, operational agility, and policy-driven security. So with observability, ASM monitors things like error rates and latency and saturation and traffic out of the box, allowing you to create SLOs based on these metrics. So if I'm a developer and I want to understand if my application is receiving a high amount of latency, or if there's any traffic or some error rates or extra traffic coming during peak times, it's going to monitor this out of the box. It can send me an alert if anything happens. It's also going to build a nice topology graph that shows how all of your services communicate to each other. So you know which service is talking to which and which services aren't talking to each other. The second thing is operational agility. So when deploying an application, developers often need to account for things like figuring out what happens when a service fails, right? If it's circuit breaking, if a service upstream fails, is it going to cascade down and ruin the rest of my application? Is everything going to go offline for my end users? Or how do I make sure that the rest of my services are up and running while that one service fails, right? How do I route traffic between my applications? What if my application is running on-prem and I want to send traffic to the cloud as part of a Canary rollout? So Anthos Service Mesh will do all of this for you without the developer actually having to modify any of their code or make any changes. And finally is policy-driven security. Anthos Service Mesh handles certificate management as well as authorization and authentication between services. This is something else that developers usually need to consider when writing their application and moving it to different environments. But this is all automated for you and handled through Anthos Service Mesh. It's also going to add MTLS to encrypt traffic. So if for some reason someone was going to come in and try to do a man-in-the-middle attack or sniff any of your traffic, it's going to be encrypted. Okay, so we could actually talk about every one of these components probably for a few hours each. And this isn't even everything included with Anthos. There's a lot of other security controls, a lot of other components to help make this a full solution. But the takeaway here is when you start to build out a hybrid cloud or a multi-cloud environment, you're going to be faced with multiple different challenges. You're probably going to have lots of different software licensing as you piece different components together. You're going to have an inconsistent experience and added work for your infrastructure teams, added work for your application owners, as they have to make adjustments for each new environment they're deploying into. But with Anthos, all of this is going to be handled for you to alleviate all of those challenges. Okay, so what about legacy applications? I think in the survey, half the people said, you're not very familiar with containers. So what do you do about legacy applications, right? What do you do about managing virtual machines or Windows workloads, right? If you're not ready to modernize your application, does this work for you? Well, yes and no. Anthos has support for virtual machines coming very soon. You can already run Windows containers in GKE if you're running on GCP with support for other environments to follow. But I think what's more important is how do you get started? What if you want to modernize your application, but you don't know where to go? Or what if you want to maybe port over a monolithic application to the cloud with a strategy to modernize it in the future? Well, at Google, we like to work really closely with our strategic partners, like Qwinix, for example, who's on this call. They're one of our top services partners. They have extensive experience with Anthos and our whole AppMod portfolio, and they can help you no matter where you are in your journey, whether you're already in the cloud or looking to get there. So with that said, I'll hand it off to Mac from Qwinix, who can talk a little bit more.
Before we get to Mac, if you don't mind, John, we had a question from Samir. Is there any mapping provided if any services specific to a particular cloud provider are being leveraged within the service? Example, using a AWS AI/ML service, can that be mapped to corresponding service in Google Cloud if such an offering exists?
Yeah, so I guess a couple things. One is if you're running in another cloud and you want to map it to what services in GCP one-to-one if you're deciding to move to Google Cloud, we have a lot of documentation on that online. I think Nick posted something. But more importantly, if there's a reason that you need to stay on-prem, or there's a reason you need to stay in another cloud as well as GCP, maybe you want to use a service in AWS, that's where Anthos actually shines, because now I can deploy my application in Google Cloud, I can deploy it in AWS, I can deploy it on-prem, and I can take advantage of those native services that are offered in AWS as well as GCP or whatever I have on-prem. And I can still have a consistent experience because I'm running the same kind of infrastructure across all of those platforms. So I hope that helps answer your question.
Yeah, that is great. Okay, well, we'll kick it over to Mac, and Mac, take it away.
All right,
thanks,
Greg. Thanks everybody for your time today. So picking up where on the next level of Anthos, the way John had been talking about it, it is very much a complete package. And some of the things you would have to implement if you didn't use Anthos, if you're trying to run your own Kubernetes, are things like Istio for communications and control, an entire elk stack. And I don't know about you, but I've tried to run a elk stack before, and it's really not a walk in the park. For doing logging and monitoring, they've got things like Aqua or Twistlock or many other tools for doing security, for doing deployment. Knative is built in. And then, of course, Google Cloud as a platform offers artifact storage and source code repositories, along with cloud build and many other aspects that really make the package an entire offering. And then looking at kind of an architect persona and diving a little bit deeper into that, what is a container question? So if you look at your typical IT infrastructure where you're running a hypervisor such as VMware or even Citrix Xen, you're going to run many virtual machines, and these could be you're probably going to have a number of different operating systems, but you're going to have several Windows, several Linux, maybe some different varieties of Linux. And what this diagram is showing is that you've got your virtual machine with your applications and your guest operating system sitting on top of your hypervisor, and then finally your infrastructure. What Migrate for Anthos really helps with is being able to kind of extract the operating system, and you could have a set of Anthos worker nodes that, for example, run Windows. So you're extracting every copy of that operating system out of the VM and using a common implementation sitting under Anthos, so that all your containers get to utilize that same infrastructure, that same operating system copy. So it does reduce your licensing, and it allows you, much as the original virtualization did when we were moving from physical to virtual, it allows you a higher density of application deployment onto your hardware. And that really affects your cost and gives you a much better utilization of your hardware. So the container really is very self-contained. When you build a container, you specify the base operating system and all the different packages or software you need and how to run the container. And that is a very powerful thing when it comes to application development, but I will get onto that a little bit later. And then looking at the components of Migrate for Anthos, or looking at Migrate for Anthos itself, what we do, one of the services we offer is doing this VM to K or V2K. I don't know why it's K, because it's containers, which is a C, but that's kind of the term that's been adopted. We'll look at your utilization across, say, 30 different servers. And once we run this through an engine we're building, we can come up with a predicted resulting virtualized workload utilization. So the same workload using the same CPU, utilization, memory utilization can be deployed onto your containerized solution like Anthos using only 7 servers. And what you're seeing here on the right is a much higher average utilization of your resources. So basically, you're not wasting your compute. And this is a very powerful thing when everybody's trying to do more with less. And this allows you to literally run more applications with less hardware. And then application modernization is kind of the next step. So once you can containerize your existing workloads, the next step in getting to efficiency would be doing an actual app modernization where you refactor your code and redeploy them into containers. And a popular approach for doing this is usually called peeling the onion, where you start to peel off layers of your monolithic application. So if we're looking at monoliths like Stonehenge here, this is your entire application. And then as you start to do your modernization, you peel off different chunks and it ends up being different containers. So you've got your container 1 and your container 2, and this gives you a much more quick and easy and controlled and secure way to deploy and manage your applications. And you can do this with Anthos by doing that VM to KA conversion, running your monolithic application as containers, and then start peeling those layers off, refactoring different components of your application, and then deploying them natively as containers into the same runtime platform. And then, so you deploy into Anthos, and now you've got a much more tightly dense, packed, and efficient operating model for your existing applications. Now, looking at the platform architect persona, you've got, like we've been talking about, Anthos. You've got the various components. Migrate for Anthos, we were just talking about. Anthos Service Mesh, which John was talking about. GCR, which is the Google Container Registry, and that's where you store your container images. Stackdriver or Cloud Operations Center within GCP does your logging, monitoring, metrics. You've got Cloud Run for Anthos that allows you to deploy simplified containers in just a more straightforward manner. And then within GCP, you can then take advantage of a lot of the services they offer in their entire platform, such as global load balancing. And this is an extremely powerful thing when you're trying to attract a global audience to your web applications or allow them to be even used privately from around the world. This routes traffic on Google's private fiber network directly to your application from the closest point to the user, giving you the highest performance and lowest latency. And then, of course, you've got the Cloud Console. As John was showing, you've got the single pane of glass where you can see all of your different clusters, all of the applications deployed and services, and do all of your monitoring in a single, consistent manner. And that's a very important aspect. And then, as I mentioned earlier, you've got Cloud Build. It will help you do deployments and manage the application lifecycle being deployed into Anthos. You've got security features like binary authentication. And this is a policy, as John was talking about, where you can restrict which containers or which sources of containers or which signatures of your signed containers are allowed to be deployed. So it gives you a very highly secure environment. And then obviously John was talking about Anthoconfig Management. I think this is one of the most powerful aspects, applying that GitOps style methodology to your cluster management and configuration. Then from a developer persona, developers, they want to write code. And once they've written that code, they want to deploy the code. So that's their key thing. That's what drives the developer. Well, of course, these days in a modern application, you're going to deploy your code into containers. And then where do you run containers? Well, obviously, Kubernetes has become, over the last several years, one of the most popular container orchestration systems. And of course, that was originated from Google back a number of years ago. And then evolving into the next layer is your Google Kubernetes engine. So instead of having to manage and run Kubernetes, which is quite a involved process, you get to just use Kubernetes. And that's one of the most powerful value propositions of a cloud, is the managed capabilities they provide, where you get to take advantage of all these good technologies without having to run them on the bottom side and really do the hard work. And then, of course, the next evolution of GKE is now Anthos. So now we can take that GKE, run it in AWS, run it on-prem, run it on VMware, and then you get, again, that whole consistent common operating model and platform. From a network perspective, this kind of builds, again, on one of John's slides, where in the network, in Anthos, you would have two pieces, your control plane and your user plane, and you can deploy these in multiple locations. So when you're running Anthos in Google Cloud, you'll have your control plane and your clusters sitting in Google Cloud. And then as you move to other environments, the clusters and the control planes spread out, but they're, again, all connected right into GCP for that common operating environment. And this allows you to use the same tools, the same applications, and the same processes. So you're not training different teams to do security. The same thing you need to do in different ways based on which environment you're deploying your applications to. So it's a very powerful and cost savings aspect of Anthos. And then obviously, as we talk about common managed platforms running in data centers like 1623 Farnam, on Azure, AWS, DigitalOcean, GCP, on-prem, it's all connected through Google Cloud. And this is why Google, Qwinix, 1623 Farnam partner with people like Megaport to really make that networking simplified. People worry about the complexity of setting up this kind of network and being able to stay connected as the connectivity becomes more and more important. And this is where, obviously Megaport and Google come in. And at this point, I'll hand it back over to Greg for our next poll.
Thanks, Mac. That was great. Yeah, we'll kick off another poll. Okay, it looks like we have some GCP users as well as other cloud users. So it's a pretty diverse group as well. So checking all the boxes. So with that, let's kick it over to Nick and Kyle. Take it away, fellas.
Thanks, Greg. So hi, everyone. My name is Nick. I'm a network specialist with Google Cloud. And effectively, I speak with customers all the time about how to make connectivity to Google Cloud and how to work out the Google Cloud networking components as easy and seamless as possible for our customers. So hopefully, from the technical audience on this call, this is going to be a bit more technical than the previous presentations, but I'll try to make it as high level as possible. So one of the big things that I want to talk about is partner interconnect. And partner interconnect within GCP is specifically our way to create a hybrid connection from GCP to an on-prem environment, or it could be to another cloud as well. So in this case, we've been talking about Anthos, and I'm going to go through some of the Anthos components as well, and how that kind of fits into the overall networking architecture. But here I want to focus on how does connectivity work and how to make it as easy and as seamless as possible. So you can see here on the right-hand side of this slide, we have the facility at 1623 Farnam. And here, this would be where your workloads are located in the data center, right? So you may have on-prem workloads already deployed in x86 compute, on-prem routers that are already there. And in this case, if you want to connect to GCP, well, it's as seamless as really making it cross-connect into Megaport. And this is what you see here in the middle of this diagram. So you can see you would order a cross-connect or a redundant set of cross-connects into Megaport. And then effectively, Megaport is already, as a partner to us, to Google, they're already connected to us within GCP. So what that means is you can effectively use their network to connect into GCP. And in this case, you would order these two cross connects. Now in GCP, we call these cross connects VLAN attachments. That's the names that you would see if you're familiar with the console. And you order these two, which provides effectively a 4.9 of SLA from your on-prem workloads into GCP. Now, the good thing with GCP is that from the connectivity within GCP and the region that we have that's closest to 1623 Farnam, which is US Central 1, we actually provide this global network fabric. So effectively, you can actually have access and reach all your workloads within GCP from a single connection within the cloud. So we allow you to have access to all the other regions in GCP if you deploy multiple workloads. And these workloads could be either from a DR perspective, or you have a global footprint and you need to provide connectivity to your users worldwide. Now, within GCP, you would have a component that we call the cloud router. And I'll speak a bit further on that in future slides. This is effectively for the networking folks on the call. This is a managed BGP speaker. So effectively from a networking component, that is the component in Google that exchanges routes with your on-prem workloads. So effectively your routers would send routing prefixes to this component and exchange a route so that it knows where to get to. And with that, as seamless as that, you now have a connection between 1623 Farnam, your workloads that are there, to Google Cloud privately, securely, and performantly. So you're effectively able to do this very quickly. And Kyle from Megaport will speak a bit more about how that works within Megaport itself. But this is really how the components tie in together with GCP. So now I'm going to speak to how this kind of fits together within Anthos. Now, a lot of these components have been discussed in great details by John and Max, so I'm not going to go through them again in full detail. But as you can see here on the slide, we have the Cloud Interconnect component, which I just talked about, which effectively provides that connectivity between the on-prem workloads that are 1623 Farnam to what's in GCP. So you can see here that provides that connectivity bridge between the two, so all your workloads can communicate privately with what's in your GKE cluster sitting in GCP, or maybe you don't have a GKE cluster in GCP and you're just starting off on-prem. It can communicate to other workloads in GCP. And you can see here, you also have third-party integration support through GCP Marketplace as well. So here, if we look at on top of the compute layer, and John has spoken about this about ASM, so the Anthos service mesh. So you can see that the service mesh here effectively creates that connectivity fabric, and as previously mentioned, right, it provides features like routing, security, and telemetry collection. So really abstracting away really the complexity of how do I connect my services between a GKE cluster that's in GCP and something that's in my Anthos cluster on-prem, right? So you can really remove that away and effectively just provide and expose a service and say, my other service is located in potentially GCP and on-prem, maybe another cloud. How do I just make communication between the two? So it really lets you remove all that complexity and allows your application to focus really solely on the business logic and making the business logic work rather than really working on how does that actually connect? How do I make connections work between the two environments? And lastly, the component that we've spoken about quite a bit, the Anthoconfig Management, really that provides, again, that kind of source of truth for your cluster configuration, whether it's on-prem, whether it's GKE, whether it's in another cloud. And really, it sits in that form of a Git repository, and which we can see here in this illustration. And it really provides that enforcement configuration locally for each of these environments, right? So managing really the complexity and of owning clusters across the environment, so you don't have to focus too much on that, and really having that single configuration pane between the two. So that really removes away all the complexity from that. And you can see here Stackdriver is integrated and all that. So cloud logging for us in GCP. So really all that can be then collected and centralized, so you have access to all your logs, and you have really that nice single pane of glass to see all that from. Now, speaking of the GCP specific portion, right, of how to do the interconnect that I spoke about. So in our product partner interconnect, really the partner, Megaport in this case, they really own that port that we have that they're connected to Google. So really the customer In your case, you would build these attachments, the VLAN attachments I mentioned earlier. You would build these 2 redundant VLAN attachments to provide that high availability and SLA bound connection. And effectively, what we allow you to do in GCP is you can provision different VLAN attachment sizes. So these attachment sizes can be effectively anywhere from 50 megabits all the way to 10 gigabits, depending on the throughput requirements that you need. And these can be actually scaled on demand. So if you wish to change the VLAN attachment size, you can do so depending on different traffic levels during the day. So if you have more traffic levels at a certain time, you could increase the capacity. If you have less traffic levels during off-peak hours, you can reduce capacity and effectively reduce cost. So we really, from the Google side, we charge a rate that's based on the attachment capacity, and that's charged per hour. Now, to get a little bit more into the technical details for some of the networking audience on the call. So again, I spoke about our managed BGP control plane speaker called the Cloud Router, and that manages the exchange of routes between GCP and your on-prem routers. We support, from an MTU perspective, we support 1440 or 1500 bytes. So you can configure either or, so from your MTU perspective. From an eBGP neighbor perspective, there is a eBGP multi-hop configuration that you have to set up, and the recommended value that we recommend is 4. And again, the VLAN attachment can actually connect to any metro edge in any region in the same continental region. So for example, I gave an example earlier on the slides that showed US Central 1, which is actually the cloud region in GCP that's as close to 1623 Farnam. But if you don't have workloads in that region and you have workloads somewhere else, you can actually extend that connectivity between 1623 Farnam with your VLAN attachments through Megaport and actually terminate it in any other region in North America. So again, that really provides that global solution so you can connect to any on-ramp within North America. And even from there, then you can actually move data between any of the regions in GCP using our global backbone. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Kyle from Megaport to talk about Megaport.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. How's it going, everyone? Kyle Moretta with Megaport. I'm a solutions architect with the team. And I'm going to be covering a little bit more about Azure and AWS and their similar offerings to partner interconnect or cloud interconnect that GCP and Nick just kind of went over there. So before I kick things off and really get into the weeds, I want to do some brief terminology alignment. So that way, you know, if I mention a VNet, that I'm talking about Azure. If I'm talking about ExpressRoute or Direct Connect, you know that that is the Azure and AWS's private layer 2 connectivity offering. And then similarly, if you hear me mention anything about the different gateways, Cloud Router, VNet Gateway, Transit Gateway, Virtual Private Gateway, and things like that, referencing AWS and Azure, just kind of help make sure everyone's on the same page here. Awesome. And now more specific to the networking piece on when I say a cloud on-ramp, that is where a partner or a customer would connect directly into these cloud regions. In each different one, Google, Azure, AWS, each call it kind of something different. So I'll just use mostly generic terms as far as cloud on-ramps, cloud edge, and then the cloud specific layer 2 technology that we're referencing. And yeah. So before we jump in here, AWS, Azure, and GCP also do have a dedicated model. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it just for the sake of time, but it's essentially where you would work with the cloud provider and get that physical port assignment that we call the LOA CFA, and then you build a cross connect directly into them. But like I said, I'm not going to go into this one in so much detail, and we're going to be mostly covering the networking or the partner model. So you see in these high level diagrams what a partner model would look like going into GCP, Azure, and AWS, where essentially instead of working directly with the cloud providers like you would with dedicated, you're working with a partner like Megaport. We hand you an LOA CFA, and then on top of our network, we have built out connectivity to each one of these clouds pre-staged and ready. And essentially we're just carving up bandwidth and allocating specific bandwidth to you for the sake of time and to make things run smoothly and to keep your network more elastic. So instead of having to run a cable to Azure, AWS, and GCP every time you want to build private connectivity into the two, you could just create that one cross connect into like a Megaport and then build your connections on top of that, on top of just that one port that you have with us. Awesome. And we're going to talk a little bit about the price here real quick. So with each one of the cloud providers, AWS, GCP, and Azure, there's going to be similar cost components to each one of their private connectivity models. Nick went through the high level and kind of more in detail for the partner interconnect with GCP. But with AWS and Azure alike, you're going to be paying an hourly port fee based upon the subscribed speed and a usage fee for all the data that you pull down out of the cloud. So really the big benefit of using a private connectivity vice just the internet or a VPN is going to be the latency that you are going to get, or better latency across the board by using a private connectivity model, vice going over the internet or using a VPN. You're going to have more predictable latency and jitter across there. And you're also going to see egress savings for the data that you're pulling down out of the cloud. I think across the board with a VPN or over the internet, egress fees are around 8 cents a gig, generally speaking, across all three. But if you were to pull that data down using a interconnect, express route, or a direct connect circuit, those egress fees are going to be pulled down to around 2 cents a gig. So some good savings on that. And just to kind of show you what that looks like when we stack them all up for what you'd be paying to each one of the cloud providers for this private connectivity. I'm not going to go through and read each cents an hour that you see here, but just to kind of give you a rough idea of what you're paying for and what that might look like from a cost perspective to maybe move over to a private connectivity model if you are using a VPN or just the public internet today. Kind of gives you a good high level of stacking up those three across the board there. Awesome. And to bring it all together, to tie it all in, we've been talking about running Anthos in different clouds and in different on-prems and things like that. And so really you could achieve this same connectivity model by leveraging the internet or VPN, but it's not going to give you the best performance or latency across all these different workloads. So with Megaport, we can help tie in and leverage these different private connectivity models that we briefly went over to tie in your on-prems with not only just one cloud, but with multiple clouds, and to have that cloud-to-cloud connectivity as well. So if you're running Anthos in a distributed environment like you see here, you could leverage a partner like Megaport to provide that private connectivity between all three environments and not have to rely on setting up VPNs or just writing the public internet, and really pulling that down to where it's private and can be most optimal as far as latency and performance goes as well, and have connectivity between all your different clusters and have the Anthos control plane ride over a private connectivity model to reach all of your different clusters, whether that's running inside of AWS or Azure, running it on-prem there in 1623 Farnam, or in GCP locally. We can help tie in those different cloud workloads and help simplify the network and help right size the network for what you're using, kind of modeling it that of your cloud workloads. Why should your networking be any different? Your cloud computing resources are elastic and can change and are scalable. And so we think that your network should be similar to that and really right size and be able to have that speed and capacity on demand when you need it. And so with that, I will kick it back over to Greg.
Yeah, we'll just hop into Q&A, and we have some panelist questions. And then if you have any specific questions, make sure you go ahead and put them into the question and answer box, and we'll get to them if we can. So we'll kick it off with Mac. So is the same OS redundancy savings offered by Linux containers available to Windows containers?
Yes, definitely. You do get to take advantage of the savings of across the number of Windows licenses you have to have in order to run your workload when you containerize. So it's a very valuable option.
Great. Anybody else have anything to add? Probably not. Okay, moving on. Question number 2, we'll start with Nick. So what pain points are you seeing from customers with distributed work from home workforce?
Yeah, I think one of the pain points that I do see specifically on that is, I mean, how do you really get, first of all, I mean, distributed working from home, the biggest thing is from a connectivity standpoint, right? So, I mean, how do you actually get to have what we're doing right now, being able to actually do it with reliance and performance? So when you're looking at things like having that aspect, especially from GCP, we can actually deploy these things in GCP from a perspective of having, distributed applications around our regions so that our users can have access to it, with better performance. So we're definitely seeing that. But specifically also from, I like to think about this because I speak to customers on the networking front all the time. And how do I get, better access from from being able to work from home and not having to use VPNs and things like that? And we like to look at things like, for example, Beyond Corp and our model from distributed work from home and being able to log on to these services reliably without having to use VPN. So we have a lot of things like that you can look into from especially on Google Cloud, how to be able to have access to these services that way. So that's kind of the biggest challenges we see, and these are our ways to solve it.
Excellent. Anybody else want to tackle that?
I had something just from a less technology perspective. I think communication has become a very big challenge. So what I try to coach everybody is that, come fire up a Meet or a Slack call or any kind of communication method that you use anytime you would pop over to my workspace if we were in an office, because I do think that the virtual work from home thing has impacted communication quite a bit. So it's important to have those facilities and have them available to everybody as well.
Yeah, that's great. Moving on to question 3. So there's a lot of moving pieces. You guys did a great job of pulling it all together. But it is pretty complicated. So if you could circle back and kind of give a high point on how the managing and the end-to-end solution creates a cohesive ecosystem. And I kind of mentioned from our part, we have 50 carriers and ISPs, we have the Internet Exchange, we have direct connections into the cloud provider, and then add Megaport on top of that. There's a lot of tools, but I think you guys can help the viewers along the way too. So I'll just add, if you want to get in contact with any of the panelists, just reach out to me, and I can certainly connect you to reach out directly. So anybody else want to add to that point on what the services you provide are?
I'll add just real quick. When we look at the overall ecosystem, at Google, we realize that there's a lot of other third-party tools that you might incorporate into your workloads, your applications. And so we work very closely with multiple ISVs to make sure that our products are all compatible and they work well together. We actually have our own marketplace, like every other cloud, where you can deploy some of those third-party applications directly into the cloud. But we actually have a version for Anthos that allows you to, let's say you want to deploy a MongoDB database, into your on-prem environment or into AWS. Or if you want to deploy something like Aqua for container security, you can do that from our marketplace and deploy it to any environment where Anthos is running, even if it's not within GCP.
Great. Anyone else?
Yeah, one thing I like, especially about Google Cloud, is their kind of open ecosystem methodology. Some of the other cloud providers seem to be trying to be the be all and end all of providing services, and I think this approach to saying, hey, we provide services that are of high value, but you can also bring all sorts of other services in is a really powerful thing to have.
And to caveat off that too, Mac, I think a lot of it too is it lets you have really the best of breed across the different clouds. So you can leverage, GCP for Anthos and Kubernetes and things like that. Then maybe the other clouds where they have strong suits and things like that, and really kind of help build not only like a diversified cloud environment, but also an environment where you're leveraging the best of each cloud offering. So you're not necessarily locked into just one cloud. You can utilize them across the board and leverage all the different services from all of them, really.
That's great. We had a question come in from Kevin Maloney asking about bare metal, and somebody just wants to do a quick high-level overview on bare metal. We can do that, or we can get on to the next question if
I can answer that very quick, or Matt.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say we've been partnering with Google since before GA on bare metal, and it's a really good way to be able to use existing hardware, for example, without having to have another hypervisor in the way if you're doing on-prem stuff. So in a 1623 Farnam, if you're trying to increase the value of your existing hardware, you install Anthos bare metal on it, and then it literally sits right on top of like an Ubuntu or Debian operating system and provides, again, that common interface where you're not having to do all of the management of an entire Kubernetes cluster, and you get the access right into GCP and the same process and methodologies. So it's a very powerful thing.
Yeah, initially when we launched Anthos a couple of years ago, the first on-prem offering was on top of VMware. You downloaded an OVA, you created a workstation that basically helped you create and manage your clusters. So you would spin up different VMs within VMware to run your containers on. We just launched bare metal, I believe in November of last year, fully GA. We've been working on it for a long time. So essentially it's taking away that VMware layer and allowing you to run Kubernetes on top of, like Mac said, like CentOS or Ubuntu or something else.
Nice. Okay, moving on to next question. What pain points are you seeing from customers with the distributed or hybrid applications? Go to Mac first if you want to take that.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. A lot of the pain points we're seeing are getting security right, getting monitoring and observability right, and getting deployments working smoothly. So that, again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but having this common platform of Anthos simplifies all those aspects because it's the same security model, it's the same monitoring and observability, it's the same deployment model across any cloud, any data center. So it's a great option for that.
Yeah, I'll add one thing is, in my previous company, I had a customer, a very large bank, that they kept talking about their cloud, right? How they use their cloud, and most of this was a private cloud on-prem with some going out to a public cloud. But when I really got into it, they really didn't have a solution. Everyone that needed something went out and purchased their own software license, and they ended up having just tons and tons of different licensing that did different things. It didn't work well together. It didn't give you the benefits or the agility of what cloud gives you. And that's where, like Max said, something like Anthos is kind of all encompassing. It brings all those components together. So you don't have to stitch together a bunch of things, which will give you a very, very inconsistent experience and make it much more difficult for infrastructure teams, dev teams, security teams to deploy to manage, to do anything like that. Maybe
I can add as well. To that, especially coming from my team, which is in the networking front, right? We some of the pain points that we often get is, so how do I connect, right? And I mean, that was one of the biggest things we spoke about here today, but it's always been, well, okay, should I use the internet? Should I use a private circuit? And how do I make this connectivity seamless? And how do I manage it from a central place, right? And often, if you start looking at the way that traditional on-prem networking has been done. We really have to kind of shift our mindset a little bit of how it's done within cloud. But we also want to make it very seamless so that our customers, when they're deploying application on-prem, they have these hybrid workloads that still need to be hybrid and they still need to communicate back to GCP. We want to make sure that it's easy for them to have access to their services, and we can make connectivity seamless. So we've launched so many products and so many things in the Google Cloud ecosystem specifically for hybrid. One thing I can kind of point out as traffic director, being such a managed control plane. Effectively, if you're familiar with some of the open source stuff, it's basically a managed pilot for being able to really manage your service mesh both on-prem and in GCP. And we've added things like, how do I seamlessly connect to a service that's on-prem from our load balancers in GCP? And we get these questions quite a lot, and we're really trying to make that as seamless and as easy as possible to have that integration that you can centrally control it from GCP, but still have all your workload on-prem. So, yeah.
Yeah, and piggybacking off of that, Nick, too. I think a lot of it comes along with running, like when you have a distributed workload like that. And really, a lot of people don't necessarily think of the networking piece as a big piece. They're like, oh, it's just a networking component. We'll figure that out later. Let's start moving everything to containerized and making the shift to the cloud and growing their cloud presence. And then oftentimes networking kind of gets left behind to figure out towards the end of a project. And you're like, oh no, now how do we actually network this and piece it together? And so I think a lot of that Megaport can come in and help with stitching that piece together. So that way you're not running into that last minute worry of, oh no, how do we stitch it all together? I don't want to use a VPN. We've been having issues with it, things like that. And really the importance of having private connectivity or having these more dedicated lines for production workloads and production traffic and things like that. And then also having the flexibility within your networking portfolio as well to be able to move around and scale up your network connectivity and your bandwidths on the fly as needs change and as use cases kind of change.
Nice, that's great. We're running up on time. We'll do the Oculus drawing here in a second, but before we do that, we can just do around the horn if anybody want to add anything that maybe you left off, or just a point to leave us with. That would be great. Start with Kyle.
Yeah, no, I thank you. Thanks everyone for attending. And if anything that I had mentioned, or you have any questions on how you could connect your different cloud environments, I'm more than happy to open up those conversations and have follow-up discussions and things like that. But more importantly, I'm just happy that everyone joined, and thanks for coming.
Mac.
Yeah, thanks everybody for your time. I really do appreciate it. The thing I would say is, do try to take a holistic, strategic approach to any kind of hybrid multi-cloud solution you're looking at, because kind of like Kyle said, you shouldn't leave any one aspect to the last minute, because it is all important. And that's something that, Qwinix as a consulting partner can help with as a strategy. So if anybody wants to reach out to me, feel free. I'd be happy to talk. Thanks again.
We'll go to John.
Sure. Yeah. So thanks everybody for listening and being here. I'll just say that the journey from traditional data center to cloud isn't an easy one for a lot of customers, especially when you start adding in hybrid cloud or multi-cloud. It gets very difficult. And so that's where we're happy to help, whether it's monolithic legacy applications or it's modern applications. We can definitely help, and we always rely on our services partners like Qwinix. I'll give them a little plug here. We actually have some programs that Qwinix is a part of that if anyone on this call today is like, hey, Anthos sounds amazing, I want to give it a test run, Qwinix can help set that up alongside of Google. And depending on the opportunity, depending on what we're doing, there may be some additional funds that Google can chip in to offset the services costs that Qwinix would be charging you for their engineering resources.
Nice. Nick.
Yeah, well, thank you everyone for listening today, and kind of echoing what everyone else said. If there's any questions, I can help, and certainly I know the networking space can be a bit scary, especially if you're not, working in the networking space your whole career. But that's what I'm here for, to help, and that's what my team is here for as well, on a specialist team, to try to make networking as easy as possible to understand, and really kind of take away all the complexity that's there, and really help you guys out as much as possible to get your environment up and running. So I'm really happy to be of any help. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or anyone else at the Google team, so we can help get your journey started.
Great, thanks, Nick. And so feel free to, if you need me to connect to any of the panelists, just let me know. My email is greg.elliott@1623farnam.com, and or you can reach out on our website. Now, as a reminder, we'll be giving away our Megaport will be giving away the free Megaport, and then we'll match that with 3 months of free Cross Connect at 1623. So we'll be sending a follow-up email to you how to get in touch with us on that as well. So that's awesome. So thanks again for everybody joining, and now's the time for Laura to shine, and drum roll please on the Oculus Quest 2.
Yes, thank you, Greg. Well, thank you all for attending today's virtual event. I hope you all enjoyed the banter as much as I did. As promised, one attendee is going to win the Oculus Quest 2. So the lucky winner is, drumroll, Scott Morris with NAIC. Scott, we will send you an email after this to connect you with your prize. Thank you so much, Mac, Kyle, John, Nick, and Greg, for sharing your expertise and insights. This is all the time that we have right now. But just to reiterate, if you would like to continue that conversation with any of our panelists, we would love that. We'd love to connect you. And so please just reach out to Greg, who provided his email, or any of us, and we will get you connected. Thank you again, and stay safe and be well.
All right. Thanks, everyone.